today is one of our Friday Salon series. We've been doing these for about 20 years. It's amazing. And on a Friday, not any particular Friday, it could be the second or the third or the fourth or the first or no Friday that month, we invite in people to talk about subject matter that we think is interesting, that could impact the river, that could help us look to the future about things that we should do, or in fact look to the past to things that we have done. And for the 30th anniversary of RiverLink, we decided, the board wanted to have one every month that focused on some of the history of RiverLink over the last 30 years and things that we've done. And so today we're going to be talking about the river, the watershed, and the parks and greenways that we have been involved with. And it's been a long journey. You know, if people have been here for a long time and knew the river 30 years ago, they think we've come a long way. If people arrived yesterday, they say, when are you going to start this project? So perspective is very important, and you know, you have different ideas depending on when you got here. For most people, myself included, history began when you got there. That's when you remember from. So we titled this Miss Jean Webb, the Queen of the River, and we've got some pictures. Lifelong Native advocate, friend, mentor, cheerleader, special person, Jean Webb of the river. And so we titled this Let's All Gather at the River, and I believe that that's a religious song. And when we think about the river, we do think of it as being a sacred place. And so we thought that was an appropriate title. And the French Broad is being reborn. And so we're here to show you some of the very early things that we did, give you a little bit of history. This is only a partial list. I would like to tell you that we have all of our projects here and all the things we've done in all the counties, but we haven't. But hopefully it'll be interesting. Now, where do I point this, Amy? Where do I point this at? At the computer screen? Oh, okay. So, Park and Greenway timeline. Anybody know what this is? French Broad River Park, and it was the first greenway in the city of Asheville. And I remember when Progress Energy gave us this land, Jean and I were so excited. And we took Bob, my husband Bob, over there, and her husband Chick down to look at the land, and we said, and they gave it to us, and he said, please tell me you didn't take it. Because it weren't pretty. As you know, the river was used as for our refuge. It's where we dumped our trash. It's where we put the stuff we didn't want to deal with for the longest time. And so that was never an official landfill where French Broad River Park is now, but it was definitely a place that if you were going to clean out your attic or clean out your closet and you didn't want to pay a tipping fee, stick it in your truck and bring it on down. So it's an important step forward. Today we're going to talk about Jean Webb Park, which was the first river access park in the urban riverfront after 1916 flood. We're going to talk about French Broad River Park, which was the first park that we did after we had a master plan for the river and had developed the riverfront plan, the open space design guidelines, and had hired a firm called Edward Durrell Stone Jr., or EDSA, to develop a master plan. I'm going to show you some of the things from that. We're going to talk about Carrier Park, or as some of you remember, it was the old Asheville Speedway. We bought that in 1999, and today it is the most used facility in the city. It is well loved. It's multi-generational and multicultural, and we're very proud of it. The Performance and Sculpture Garden. It was the missing link on Riverside Drive from 12 Bones to the Smith Bridge. Pretty ugly 26,000 square foot bright blue buildings that we bought. We relocated the owners, we tore down, and we now do river music and concerts there. And it's going to be a vital part of this new rad tip program that's coming through with greenways and sidewalks and everything. It's kind of exciting. Hominy Creek, we were the fiscal agent for Hominy Creek. We raised a lot of money to buy the Hominy Creek Greenway, and that is an extension of what we're doing on and have done on Amboy Road, and it is another link in the Wilma-Dykeman Riverway, which goes all the way down to the North Carolina Arboretum, and Josh here from the county is taking it even further down to Lake Julian, and the big picture is coming to be. Karen Cragnolin Park, that was, it's kind of odd for me to be talking about that, but that was the old Edico junkyard, and not everybody has a junkyard named after them. And, we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges that we've had with that. It is not quite a park yet, but it will be. Pearson Bridge, we really wanted to commemorate a historic location and to control the entrance way at Pearson Bridge and celebrate our history, which along the river in particular is gone, and people don't know it anymore. They don't remember where things were or how important they were. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about Azalea Road and the soccer fields there and the stream restoration that we did there. We hold the conservation easement over that property. So we do a lot of stuff. And hopefully this is in some order that you can follow. Because I will tell you that I finished putting this together at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Okay, so from 1904 to 1916, the old Riverside Park. And there were lots and lots of postcards that you could still find today that were sent out of pictures of Riverside Park. It was at Pearson Bridge. And basically, the Asheville Electric Company created a diversion off the French Broad River, and they ran trolleys from downtown all the way down to the depot, then over to Riverside Park, then back down to Amboy Road, all the way along Hominy Creek, up to the Hotel Belmont and back. So we were a pretty connected city at that time. West Asheville connected to East Asheville through a trolley system that included the downtown and the river. This is 1904. The trolleys were powered by the electricity, the hydroelectric power that was generated from the river. So there was a lot of connections with the river, and it really was a place that people gathered, unless you were black, because like all of Asheville's parks at the time, it was segregated. So black folks weren't allowed to go. They had a carousel, a boathouse, and a movie screen, and that's a trolley at Riverside Park that after the flood of 1916. So it was, you can see this is a great picture. Dave Russell down there found this picture, and I stole it off his computer. It's a wonderful picture, and it shows you the devastation of the flood that wiped it out. And the flood of 1916 caused over $10 million in damage and over 80 deaths. Well, in 1916, $10 million was actually a lot of money. You know, today we go, 10 million, it's only 10 million. In those days, that was a lot of money, and 80 deaths was a lot. And it was, 2 hurricanes that converged, and a lot of rain that came this way, a lot of landslides, and a terrible incident and tragedy that occurred in our community. So along comes, after the 1916 flood, homes started moving away from the river. People in agriculture, and you'll find a lot of photographs of people that were farming along the riverbanks and started moving away from it. All of a sudden, the river's, kind of dangerous. 1970, the Tennessee Valley looks at the French Broad River and goes, oh, great. We have completely dammed the Tennessee part of this river. We're going to help you out. We're going to do that in western North Carolina. And the people of western North Carolina, particularly the people in Henderson and Transylvania County, got together and they formed something called the Upper French Broad River Defense League. And I've actually met some of those folks. They're in their 90s now. And they raised hell. They just raised hell, and they stopped TVA. Now, think about this. In 1970, TVA was God. You didn't say no to TVA. You said thank you. And so they fought, and they won, and they kept the river free-flowing. They really wanted to keep western North Carolina section of the river free-flowing. The people here in this community felt that was important. They had seen what happened in Tennessee. TVA was totally unaccustomed to losing. And they felt as though they had somewhat of a black eye here in western North Carolina, so they appropriated some funds, not a lot of funds, through Land to Sky Regional Council, which is our local council of governments that covers Transylvania, Henderson, Buncombe, and Madison County, the main stem of the watershed of the French Broad River. And they said, okay, now put some river access points in there. And so they weren't much. I mean, but it was the first system of people getting on the river. So they had railroad ties, they might have had a trash can, they might have had a parking space for 2 cars. Maybe if it was really, really luxury, it had a bench that you could sit on. But they weren't much. But, again, it was the first time that you could actually get a series of inputs and takeouts on the river. Not that anybody in the 70s was dying to get in the river. It wasn't until 1972 that we had the Clean Water Act. So, we were still using it pretty much as a dumping ground. So, this is a map, and I don't know if you can see it very well, of the TVA dam system in Tennessee, and it's pretty significant what they've done to the rivers. And of course, they do create a good deal of hydroelectric power, but that's what we didn't want here. This is the carousel at the old Riverside Park, and I love that roof line. And when we hired Jane Matthews, who's right here today, as an architect, we said, in the new park at French Broad River Park, we don't want you to copy that, but can you give us that feeling? Because we really want to have a lot of historic reference in the park systems that we do. And that was the boathouse. And there are lots of pictures of Thomas Wolfe and his brother in a boat at the boathouse. It really was a place where people met and courted and socialized. And this is absolutely my favorite. This is a movie screen, and you could only see the movie screen if you were in a boat in the river. Now, this is 1904. This is pretty aggressive, pretty cool time. So they have a fire at Riverside Park in 1915, and that wipes out some of it. They have the Great Flood of 1916. It takes out the rest. And what happens? People move away from the river. It becomes an open sewer. And all this land, basically, along the river, from the railroad bridge north to the Woodfin town line, became city landfill. So that's where we would take our trash. They'd pick it up at your house, put it on the banks of the river, and pray that it would flood, because then it was Tennessee's problem. The only problem with that is the whole country was doing it. And so I'll show you some photos later of places where in 2004 it didn't flood. And I talked to John Boyle today because he's doing some stories. This is the 100-year anniversary of the 1916 flood. And we talked about why some parts of this part of the river don't flood, and it's because it's on it's raised up those buildings on an uncompacted landfill. It's much higher. So that's all that area became landfill. RiverLink's board said, you know what, we feel pretty good about what's happened and what we've started in the River Arts District with buying the warehouse studios, with creating some parks and activity. We're very excited with what we've done on Amboy Road. We turned the Speedway into Carrier Park. We bought Cragnolin Park. We work with the DOT. We've gotten money. So they're kind of moving along. We want to move the Wilma-Dykeman plan north. And we have some criteria to do that. First of all, we want a historic location. We like dirty dirt, so if it's got some dirt that's dirty, we probably want that. And third, we want to be able to create some river-friendly business activity. And so we started looking at Pearson Bridge, because that's the old Riverside Park area, and nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. And there was a tire store on the corner, and we decided we wanted to buy it. Well, that's always a bad thing, to go talk to somebody who doesn't want to sell, that you want to buy their building. So I wouldn't say we got the best deal, but we got the building. And it was the oddest combination building of tires and Bibles I have ever seen. Once again, we called Jane Matthews and said, Jane, we don't have any money practically, and we have 90 days to turn this thing around with a change of use. Can you help us? And she said, sure, and she was right there. So this is what it looked like on the inside. Tires galore, and Bibles, Pepsi machines. I mean, it was pretty rough. One of the interesting things is when we went to buy it, we had to do a survey to get for the deed, and we found out that half of the building wasn't even owned by the guy who was selling it to us. It was on somebody else's property. So I had to call him and say, Terry, fortunately we knew him. I said, Terry, we just did the survey. We're thinking about buying this old tire store that's right next to your property, but you're actually own half of the building. It's on your property. And what he said, and I treasure this, was, I am thrilled that RiverLink is coming down here, because that means that there'll be some more economic activity and more attention to this part of the river. So I'm going to give it to you. So he just gave it to us, which was really neat. So this is what it looked like on the outside. I mean, it was a total eyesore. This was the area around it, okay? And of course it was graffiti heaven, very ugly. And so we said, okay, we had a very generous donor who helped us. We borrowed money, we begged money, we got professionals to volunteer their services. We did, everything that we usually do. And we said, this place needs a new roof. And so we put a new roof on. And we dropped the ceiling in there, and we put in heat and light and air conditioning. And in doing that, we found out that for the 25 years that it was a tire store, they had never had an account with the electric company. They had hot-wired the building off of a pole. So, I mean, when we talk about this part of the river being neglected, there's no question that that was the case. It was a forgotten part of the river. How could you run a business for 25 years and never have an electric account? So lots of surprises. We then did a request for proposals to outfitters, and we said we wanted to get this as a river recreation business with outdoor gear and renting boats and bringing people down to the river and going from that northern end into Woodfin and further into Madison County. And so we interviewed a lot of people and asked for proposals to run this business. And we kept getting things back that people were going to run a boat business for 3 months or 4 months. We didn't want that. We wanted 12-month activity. And we finally found a company, a group, young kids, to do this. And so we committed to them to basically subsidize them for 5 years so that they could get into business, that they could have enough money for inventory, and they could have enough money to advertise. And I will tell you that last year they did over 5,000 trips. And they've opened a second location. It's very exciting to see this happen. So, whole new look and feel here with boats and outdoor gear. Also at this corner is the oldest USGS gauge in east of the Mississippi. And we're working with USGS now to paint that with some endangered species on the river. As another education tool, as another way to bring attention to this. You kind of drive by it and you don't know what it is. But this is historic. It's right behind this building. So we're working with that. We wanted to have a river access point there, and so we were able to put a river access point on the river, and we are dedicating that actually. It was on Tuesday, the 22nd?
Wednesday at 4:30.
Wednesday at 4:30, and I hope you'll come. And we hired a welder who's an artist to do the handrails, and it's quite beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it is probably the most elaborate river access point we've ever put in. Now, in 2004, you remember how bad the flooding was if you were here. This building never had any water. This end of the river, old landfill, built way up, so the water never reached into this building. So I give you an idea. Now, as we designed the river access point, it's an old landfill. This particular piece of property that's right behind the building is owned by the city, and we're leasing that property from them. Okay, so we own completely the north side, and we own the railroad tracks from the railroad tracks to the road on the south side. But the piece of property behind that was actually owned by MSD. They put a sewer line in, and then they gave it to the city. The city didn't even know they owned it until we called them. So we're digging up to put in the river access point here, and guess what we found? Storage tank. So they had to bring this truck out to drain the storage tank, and that was the tank. And that had to be removed before we could continue with construction. So, some people have called us and said, "Oh my God, we should be planting food all over the river. We should be using that." And I go, "Well, we got to test first because we don't know what we have." I can't, the story about the poison apple and what happened to Snow White. We don't want that happening. So this is pretty typical when you start digging up along the river, that you're going to find some stuff that somebody disposed of illegally. But the city was great. They came in, they took it out, and that was it. The Great Flood of 1916, like I say, wiped out all of that Riverside Park. It was gone. Anybody recognize this lady? So Jean Webb, from 1916 until 1988, when she did Jean Webb Park.
In 1916, I was working on
She-
the park.
The flood was hell, wasn't it, Jean? Jean saw a piece of property on the river in the urban section where Jean Webb Park is now. It was completely overgrown. You could hardly see the river. And she said to herself, "We haven't had river access in the urban section of the city of Asheville since 1916, and I'm going to change that." And so this is what it looked like. It was kudzu and poison ivy heaven. And Jean Webb was out there with clippers and cutters and anybody she could find to go out there and help her do that. She also enlisted the Seabees. She got Bill Cecil Jr. to come over here with heavy equipment from the Biltmore estate. And Town and Country Garden Club was very involved in this. And it was a big, big deal. Now, at the time, the county ran all the river access parks. So we went to the county when Progress Energy said or CP&L at the time, said that they would lease this land. We went to the county because the county did all the river access parks and said, "Will you maintain it?" And they did. And they did a very good job for until just about 2 years ago. So that's Miss Webb. Jean Webb Park has river access, and it was, again, the first river access since the 1916 flood. That's it being built. And that's Jean and Chick. Do you want to elaborate? There's probably some funny stories and wonderful stories.
Well, I think it was so overgrown, and we were trying to find a place to have Riverfest. And so we started, getting rid of all the vegetation, and we found a wall back there.
Right.
And
It's still there.
yeah, and so everybody, just a lot of hard labor, and so when we dedicated it, I was completely
Totally surprised.
because our county commissioner chairman, Kurt Ratcliffe, was there, and they pulled off this piece of, material, and there it was. So it was as Karen said, the only access in the city of Asheville. There'd been access areas north and south, but it was our first one.
Right. And Curtis Ratcliffe was a Republican. It was in the days when Republicans and Democrats talked to each other. And they were excited about this. I feel as though they were pretty excited about this. Picnic benches and tables and trash cans. And there's a picture, that's Curtis Ratcliffe in a picture with Jean. So this was a big deal, and this became the gathering place. We did all kinds of stuff there. Riverfest was there, and Riverfest, by the time we stopped holding it there, was up to about 8,000 people attendance. The Millette family, which owned the ice house right across the street, which now is gone, Dave Millette would bring his Clydesdale horses, and he would do hay rides up and down the river. We had a taped history of the Buncombe County Trail that you could get in the horse-drawn carriage and go through there. live music and bands and, all the stuff that you do. And people would show up, and it was maybe the only time in the whole year that they would come down. When you go out today and you see the urban section of the river, I mean, it's a traffic jam out there. There's so many boats. That was certainly not the case back in the 80s.
And we held it come hell or high water. One time it rained so hard, we had canoes out in the street,
And Jane Matthews has the distinction, right? What'd you win?
I won the very first River Fest. I won the grand prize. I won a Bowl Town canoe. And then my then boyfriend asked me to marry him shortly thereafter, and so we call it the dowry dinghy. We had a handmade canoe that we used to use on the river. That was a real classy act.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, and this is the picture of the old ice house. And if you see that, you see the paddle wheel there? The red? That was something the Millette family let us do. And it was really important that the property owners, because there was a lot of skepticism about coming back to the river. Did this mean industry was going away? I remember we were being accused of eminent domain every day. I was like, we don't have that kind of power. But making that paddle wheel there was just another, I don't know, kind of fun thing that made you look at the building, that got people to take another look. And that was an important thing. And the Millettes were great. They were really very fun. I remember when coming down here one of the first times at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and the only thing you could smell down here was bread. Do you remember? Because all the supermarkets used to keep bread in their refrigerator service at the ice house. And so you'd have this smell of, do you remember that at all? And then the rest of the time, the overwhelming smell was ammonia from the ice house, because they used ammonia in the process. So when Jean Webb Park was done, there was a lot of wow, this is popular. People will use these if we come, and we gotta have a plan. We just absolutely have a plan. And so we worked with the American Institute of Architects and the American Society of Landscape Architects, which are the two national organizations that represent architects and landscape architects. I mean, basically the built environment and the natural environment. And invited them to come to Asheville and to work with our community to vision what could happen on the river. What could happen? We have Jean Webb Park now, and people like it, but it's too little, and there's not enough amenities there for you to go for the day. So what else would you like to see? And I will tell you, the entire community showed up. It was really incredible to see very conservative folks showing up and saying, we need soccer fields in the floodplain, and we need a connection from downtown to the river. And I went to such and such city, and I walked along there, and I had dinner, and my cousin lives on a river in such and such a city, and I went shopping. And so we put that all into a book called The Riverfront Plan, and we won the American Planning Association award with it, which put a lot of pressure on us because our idea kind of was doing this plan was we were going to do it and give it to the city. Here you go. That didn't happen. So we then said, okay, we need some design guidelines. This is a 50, 60, 70-year project, and we need to be able to say when all of these are done, because they're going to be incremental all through the watershed, that there's some elements of design that would make it a unit. And so what we said, the bottom line is be authentic. Use native plants, use indigenous materials, no igloos. We have a lot of architectural history that you can draw from, so be authentic. It didn't have to do with what size windows you had. It had to do with reflecting Western North Carolina and Asheville. We had a lot to be proud of. Now, to even put more pressure on us, we ended up being in National Geographic's and the June 1990 issue, and it was the emerging greenway in Asheville. So Asheville, with not one thing happening here other than Jean Webb Park on the river, is making National Geographic's. That ought to tell us that Asheville, even back in 1989, was on the radar and on the map, and people were paying attention. And other people were coming here from around the country and looking at our river and going, you got something. You got something. You can do something with this. This ought to be an asset. So Progress Energy gave us that land at French Broad River Park, and this is French Broad River Park, and this is the land that Bob and Chick said, tell me you didn't take it. But we did, and we got $20,000 grant from the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation to do a master plan for this property with construction documents, which is completely ridiculous. That isn't even enough money to do anything. Nothing. So, but we sent out a request for proposals, and Edward Durrell Stone Jr., one of the most famous landscape architects in the whole country, decides he wants the job and bids $13,000 for the job. So we get him here and we say, well, we really don't want to just design that, because there's this piece of property CP&L owns, and they own all of this, and we want to come back and on the west side of the bank and make that a loop. So will you design that? Okay, but we won't give you construction documents for the rest of it, but we will for here. So that was a very big step forward, and it was really, we had design guidelines, we had a master plan, and now we had land, and we had something that we could go to foundations and get money for to begin to implement, and we did. This park now has been named one of the Land and Water Conservation Fund's best parks in the 21st century. It feels really good. The day that we dedicated this, one of our board members was a woman named Margie Maxwell. Some of you may have known her. She lived up in Bartlett Street. She grew up here. And her mother could never go to the old Riverside Park. She was black. She wasn't allowed to go there. And the day we dedicated this, she sat in a lawn chair right next to the restroom and smiled broadly for the whole day. And I said, Miss Elizabeth, are you having fun? She said, you know how proud I am that not only is this park here and I can be here, but my daughter is on the board of RiverLink, the group that kind of made this happen. I've got some pictures of this, and of course we had a flood during the middle of construction. Jane Matthews down there was our architect. So when we were doing the surveys and stuff, and we got AB Tech students to do all the surveys of the property, I mean, you got to remember, we had no money. They came back and they did surveys, and the guy said, I think you get some hydric soils here. Oh gosh, well, we want greenways around there. Ed Stone's group said, don't worry about it, this is going to be a design feature. We're going to build boardwalks over the hydric soils so we have public access and we protect the wetlands. And that's a theme that will be carried throughout all of the projects, all of the other parks that are coming. You can see that there. That's what Jerry Sternberg calls the Taj Mahal toilet. It is probably the most expensive toilet in the history of mankind. We used to joke that the foundation of this went down to Atlantis, and it is unfortunately known also as a flow-through building, which is a more technical name, which is kind of awkward for it being a restroom. But the Floodplain Managers Association come here for their national conference, and they call and they want to see that building because it was designed to flood, and the water goes in and the water comes out. It's been we've had 7 floods at French Broad River Park since it was built. There was never a question of if; it was always a question of when and how often that flooding was going to occur. So if you look at that building today, and I've got a picture of it, a finished picture, you definitely say this is an Asheville building. This is a Western North Carolina building. Jane did a great job. This is an overlook on the river, and we kept hearing from people all the time, we don't get to see the river. It's overgrown, there's no roads down there, there's no place to walk. Gosh, we need this kind of overlook that we could do this. And it's been really exciting to see how many people use that. There's been concerts there. A couple of people have gotten married there. One day I was giving a tour to some young students and an education program there, and I found a pair of ladies' underpants that I was trying to stuff in my pocket so the kids couldn't see him. I'm not sure. I think a lot of stuff happens down here. So, more boardwalks. And if you see that building in the back, if you remember the old Riverside Park roof, you can get that feel again. That's what Jane did. One of the things that we were pretty determined to do was to build on this land, and we got a lot of pushback from the community because it was on the west side of the river. Now you got to remember, back in the early 80s, West Asheville could have been in West Africa. People didn't go there. It was West Asheville. Nobody paid attention to it. And I remember one of my neighbors, who was a volunteer with us and was a very nice man, said to me one day, if you build this park there, you know, you're going to get some black people. They're going to just show up. And it was like, well, that was kind of the point. That was, you know. We also liked starting the project on the west bank of the river because it showed that the river could be the thing that united the community. It knit the community rather than split the community. And that's in the past it had been. It had been you lived on one side of the river or the other, and you kind of didn't cross that too much. So, of course, we had a flood in the middle of construction, and so we tested the premise that it wasn't going to be a question of if, it was a question of when and how often, and it was pretty often. You can see now on top of this pavilion, Jean's Garden Club got together and they did a beautiful weather vane on the top so that there would be, you could tell which way the wind was blowing. Of course, that was stolen pretty much immediately, but it was there. More flooding. You get a sense of what it looked like underwater. It's actually quite pretty underwater. It becomes like a lake in there. And it was such a nice park when it was finished that Ann Vasilick came down and painted it, and this is an Ann Vasilick original that she did for us of French Broad River Park. And you know, we love this. We have posters of this. And so to come from an eyesore landfill where nobody would go in their right mind unless you were going to dump some roof tiles, to being an Ann Vasilick painting and inspiration is kind of a big deal. And today we have all kinds of events there. The Children's Bike Parade, Riverfest. We have all kinds of stuff there. I'll tell you that the Wiccans meet there. It's the confluence of two rivers. That's a special sacred place for the Wiccans. That's where they meet pretty regularly. Wilma Dykeman did some readings there for us early on. Laura Frangipani, who works at UNCA, also did some readings from Wilma Dykeman's stuff and put on a play. So we've had sculpture events there. We've had all kinds of events. And I'll tell you, there was such concern that this was on the west side of the river and isolated in a really bad area because it was surrounded by public housing. Nobody was going to use it, that a dog park was proposed to be part of it. And the idea being that people will walk their dog in the rain, the snow, and maybe they'll come. Maybe they'll come. It's So we had our master plan, and the Speedway was not on our master plan, truthfully, but it was certainly right next to the property on our master plan, and the owner of the Speedway approached us and said, I will do a bargain sale with you. I've been trying to sell this thing for 3 years. Can't sell it to anybody, and I hate it. I've never even been to a race. What happened was the previous owner was shut down by the IRS for not paying his payroll taxes. So that was on a Friday. By Monday, 2 new owners had bought it, and they were going to be partners. One was going to be the money partner, the other one was going to be the operation partner. By Wednesday, they had a falling out, and the money partner was all of a sudden running the racetrack. So he and his girlfriend were down there sloshing beer on Friday nights. They'd never even been to a race before. Hated it. So he couldn't sell it, and he approached us, and this was 50 acres on the river. It was like, wow, this is kind of hard to pass up. And truthfully, I personally did not know a lot about racing. I'd never been there, and I could hear it from my house. But and I knew that it was open 20 nights a year, and it cost $20 to get in. Free park, open 365 days a year. I don't know. It seemed like a good deal. So we signed confidentiality agreements with him, and He gave us 9 months to raise $1.2 million, and we did it. We were more shocked than anybody. So that's when it was a racetrack. It was a 1/3 of a mile track. Lots of famous people got their start there, and now it's lovingly known, the old racetrack, is the Velodrome, or the Melodrome. And people, all kinds of ages, and children and adults have teams, and they use it. And the TDA has appropriated money for this to be resurfaced. We bought this in '99, and really no maintenance has been done since then. Jane got the contract to fix up the bathrooms. She's the bathroom queen.
And they're lovely.
Right? The old bathrooms are not great. She doesn't have a whole lot of money to do it, but they're going to be much better than they were. Playground, and we had 1,000 people build the playground in 5 days. Was anybody here part of that? I knew you were, Jean.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the most amazing 5 days of our lives. We hired the Leathers architectural firm out of New York, and this is what they specialize in. They sent architects down and construction people. They went and they interviewed school children. What kind of stuff do you want to see here? They interviewed historians, and so there's an airplane that the kids can ride in there because this was the first airport. There's 2 racetracks with the famous numbers of the racetrack drivers. The fire department came down and they built a fire truck for that, and they built a suspension bridge for the kids. And so we had 1,000 volunteers, 5 days. I looked around at one point, my daughter was there with a power tool. I almost had a heart attack. And it's still standing, and it's really a wonderful little park. Lots of people have taken their children and grandchildren to learn how to ride their bike there because there are no cars, and it's a safe place to do it. And it got so popular that we had to build this bridge across it because people were walking across the track, and there was a lot of conflict between people on bikes and skateboards and that. So we had to buy, the city sent us the bill to build this bridge to the infield where the playground is, and the dry hockey rink, and the volleyball fields, and the basketball court. And the thing that maybe we were most proud of is our outdoor classroom there, a 14-acre constructed wetlands at Carrier Park. We teach 5,000 students a year, K through 12, and we use this as an outdoor classroom for the kids, and the wetlands are working. All the stormwater was forced into it. It's completely interpreted. If you don't know a thing about wetlands, constructed wetlands, just walk around. You can read all of the information. We have a lot of volunteers that get down there. Dave gets them down there, and they take out the invasives and clean it out and thin it out on a pretty regular basis. But this was money we raised through Fall in Love with the French Abroad, through grants that we wrote, through donations that we got, and it was one of the things that we were most proud of. This used to be a parking lot, and it was a place where people went mudding. I don't know if you know what mudding is, but you get in a truck and you make ruts in the mud. Seems like a really good pastime to me. Greenways. So we did the Greenway, and we really wanted to get people excited about greenways and further the cause. And so we hosted a Southeast National Greenway Conference. We got funding to do this from Julian Price's foundation. And I don't remember if anybody remembers Dr. Lowell Orbison. That's him with his suitcase, and we called it Greenways Bring Greenbacks to Your Community. Because we knew if we said greenways are good for water quality, people would say, we don't care about that. But they do care about economic development. And that was part of our history, that we would try to always bring up the economic part of why it was good to do the environmental part of it. And so we had a conference. 400 people came from all over the Southeast. It was incredible. And it really, I think, started a lot of conversation. And this is a graphic from the Wilma Dykeman Plan. It's another big plan that we did on the 10th anniversary of the Riverfront Plan. And again, the area that we did the Wilma Dykeman Plan 10 years afterwards, because we had built a bunch of parks, we had bought a bunch of buildings. People were starting to notice the river, and we said, we don't really have a plan for the next 15 years. nor have we checked on what we've done. So we need to certify kind of what we've done. And so this time we raised actual money. We raised $250,000, and we did a national request for proposals. And we had teams coming from New York, Chicago, Boston, getting off the plane, and pretty much they would all say the same thing. I've been to Asheville. I really love this place. Went to the Grove Park Inn, went to the Biltmore Estate. I was on the Blue Ridge Parkway. I didn't know you had a river. So that was 1992, and people were still saying that. So we hired a team, a multidisciplinary team of architects, landscape architects, engineers, transportation engineers, and an economic development consultant. And driving the economic development consultant around, I still remember the day he said to me, "You can't swing a dead cat without hitting an acupuncturist here." He said, "I've never been in any place that has so many alternative health medicines." And at that point, he estimated the underground economy for alternative health here was at 20 million or more. 20 million or more. And so with our economic development strategy, we added to recreation, arts and crafts, health and wellness, because that was such a emerging and authentic, if you will, example. People say, "Oh, the river's a monoculture." Well, it's anything but a monoculture. And so these 17 miles are divided into 7 different districts. And basically it runs from the east. This is the French Broad, yeah. This is Swananoa here, okay? So when we were doing French Broad River Park, we were right here. Now, we had a plan that went down to here and came back, but again, we didn't think that was enough, and we said, we want to do something bigger, and we want to anchor this plan at world-class attractions, so that those world-class attractions will also be excited about being connected to the rivers. And so up here, at UNCA and Broadway, we said, well, we'll anchor it basically to the Botanical Gardens in UNCA. Not exactly a world-class attraction, but going up to Madison County, and that ride is scenic and probably the most used area. Down here, you said Biltmore Village. I mean, my gosh, what could be more scenic and important than that? And then coming over here on the Swananoa River, we said we're going to anchor it at the Blue Ridge Parkway headquarters off the Swananoa River, another world-class attraction. And this is the Blue Ridge Parkway, and it comes back over here to the North Carolina Arboretum. So 1 million visitors a year. World-class attractions, anchors this, creates a demonstration plan and a project that can be replicated, because we've got all the materials for the whole watershed. It was always the plan to do it here, replicate it elsewhere. So then we had a missing link on Amboy Road. Anybody remember the old Edico junkyard? Yeah. Not very attractive. And this is kind of what it looked like. And Bob Shepard, who was the director of Land and Sky Regional Council for 30 years, and he was the chairman of the organization, and our deal was we were going to buy Edico on the morning that the owner called us and said he had all the cars off the site. I said, okay, that'd be good. We don't have to dispose of these cars and trucks. So we walked the site, and we just looked at each other and went, oh my God. Because he had a dispute with the city, and the owner, in his way to get even with the city, was to tell every cement truck in the state to come and clean their trucks there. So this 6-acre site was not only covered with cars, underneath the cars was cement. In some places, the cap was 8 feet deep. So we kind of looked at each other and said, okay, what are we going to do? And Bob said, if not us, who? So we went ahead and we bought it. And then we started calling companies all around to say, hey, we'd like to recycle some cement. Do you have any ideas? And fortunately, God bless, that we have a guardian angel. D.H. Griffin, which is a local company, came forward and said, you know what? We live here. We are a national company. We have cement recycling is actually becoming more and more of an issue nationally. We're going to use this as a training site for the whole country. And so if you will give us the cement, we can grind it up and sell it. We'll recover some of our costs, and we can train a lot of people. We were like, oh, you can have the cement. So for 9 months, we ran this mining operation on Amboy Road, where they dug up the cement and then put it into a grinder, ground it up to a certain granularity, and then it was sold as a component in asphalt. It was incredible. 6 acres and estimated 100,000 pounds of cement. So we have a sister city in Russia, and somehow they heard about what we were doing, and they had a TV crew with them, and they told their host that they wanted to come down and see it. And so they interviewed us down at the site. We were on Moscow TV, but they interviewed the head guy here for D.H. Griffin and really said, volunteerism does not exist in Russia. They have no concept of it, none. And so they kept pushing Brian Alexander, why would you do this? What did you get out of it? It was, well, we trained some people, we got great publicity, and they kept pushing like they didn't believe it or there was some ulterior motive. And Brian finally got mad and said, hey, I live here, I'm getting married, I'm gonna have a kid. And that was the best answer. That was the best answer. So it turned out to be great. We got that. So then, this was about the time the stimulus money was around, and so we got stimulus funds to do something new. And we partnered with Research Triangle International at Raleigh to we call this our foreign soil project. We dug up contaminated dirt, because it was an old, underneath the cement was all contaminated with volatile organic compounds, oil, gas, grease, diesel. And we sent dirty soil to Belgium. They took it to the lab, and they created a liquefied bacteria out of the soil. Out of the soil. And they shipped it back to us. And we hydroseeded the entire site, the whole 6 acres. We GPS'd the whole site where we put test spots, and we then sprayed it with this bacteria. Now, the neat thing about this kind of phytoremediation is that there's no hazardous byproduct. If you use mushrooms, it will take metals and other things out of the soil, but guess what? Then you have to destroy the mushrooms. Here, there is no biohazardous waste because the bacteria that was created only lives on the contaminants in this soil. So it was pretty cool. Then we had to create an irrigation system that Bob and I had the worst fight we've ever had in our 42 years of marriage trying to run. It was a computer system that was totally jerry-rigged, and it was supposed to work in half-hour intervals and water the 6 acres at different times during the day. Dave's good best friend was retired scientist from NOAA and went every day or every other day to get soil samples to make sure that it was wet enough. And he would send me these 12-page charts on the water conditions. And then I would call him and I'd say, Rob, this is fabulous. Is it wet enough? So we identified 26 really highly contaminated hotspots, and all but one are clean. So this works. This is a project that we're really proud of, and I kind of dropped the ball last couple of months with it, but we're going to pick it up. As soon as we hydroseeded the site, we had bears and other wildlife on it, right on Amboy Road. I mean, it's really pretty exciting to have that kind of wildlife right in our urban area. This is a piece of information that's up there today. It's an interpretive sign, and you can find out everything you ever wanted to know about phytoremediation if you want to go read that. Now, it's if you see this map, you see that if you could see 1 down on the right corner, okay, see that number 1? That's the warehouse studios where we are. You see 2, okay? That is a RiverLink piece of property. You see 3, that's a RiverLink piece of property. You see 4, that's a RiverLink property, and you see 5 and 5, and that's New Belgium now. And this is the area that the new road's going through. New Belgium is right across the property from us. It's the area of the old historic cotton mill, and it's where we do our river music concerts. So real important kind of area to us. And we've, again, real close to Jean Webb Park, bringing lots of people down to the river. We get 2,500 or so people for these concerts. It's kind of cool. So in the middle of that area, this is what we bought, the 26,000 square foot blue buildings. Once again, he wasn't hot to sell. We paid way too much for it, but it was the last missing link. And we had already tried to buy him out several years earlier with FEMA hazard mitigation funds that Locke Faircloth, if you can imagine, helped us get money for. He refused it at the 11th hour, and so that we were back to ground zero. So we started talking to him. We finally figured out, we gave some of the tenants in their 6 months free rent to relocate. We did everything we could to make it happy. And then, to make it work, we worked with the artists in the district, and we recycled about 25% of the materials in the building. And actually, in the Phil Mechanic building, the whole second and third floor was redone with wood from the old 26,000 square foot bright blue buildings. But we would do this on weekends, and honestly, you'd finish, and it looked bigger when we finished. It was 26,000 square feet big. The Asheville Merchants Association gave us a grant, and we were able to hire D.H. Griffin to come in and take down the rest of the building. And I love this picture because it shows behind this ugly stuff that we got used to seeing was this beautiful river. And so D.H. Griffin came in and helped us. And again, Brian came to the rescue. He said, "How much is your grant?" And I said, $25,000. And he said, "Well, my estimate for this is $75,000. And I said, "Oh, Brian, we need to take it down." He said, "Okay, I'll do it for 24." We had lots of events there. We had dinner and dancing under the stars when we got the buildings down, and it was the Great Recession, and it was during the down economy. And now this is where we host River Music, and Dave Russell back there is Mr. River Music. He makes it all happen. Yep. On that property, we've had 2 different groups of outdoor manufacturer executives come to Asheville for their conferences in 4-year intervals, and both times they have taken a whole day, all of them, 250 people to come down and help us clean this area, raise money to put in benches, picnic tables, and all kinds of stuff. And this was one of the groups. So we have bike racks there, we have picnic tables, and we have a river access point that lets people in the river. And another wonderful artist-designed hand railing. We're really trying to bring art into the landscape. That was part of what the design guidelines said, is let's make things not just useful, but beautiful. This is a piece of property that we were able to get donated in Kenilworth. And if you remember several years ago, the Kenilworth neighborhood was suing the city and suing the developer. There was the part in blue is 3.5 acres, and it was scheduled and zoned for 150 units. It's a steep slope. It's about like this, and it wasn't high enough in altitude to come under the steep slope ordinance, and so the developer owned it. He went out and he got drawings done for it and all the rest. He went to the city and was about to get a permit when the neighborhood went bonkers, and lots of lawsuits back and forth. And we approached the developer and said, "You're not going to win this one. I agree that the city ought to be really clear about what you can do and what you can't do on a piece of property, and we agree that you have spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and you've been, threatened and all kinds of stuff. But you're not going to win this. Nobody's going to let you build 150 units on this. This fell through the cracks, and you ought to just give us this land." And he said, "Okay." And we got it appraised, and we were able to help him with a good tax deduction, so he got some of his money back. And that will be a park connecting the neighborhood of Kenilworth to the river at some point in time. It's right now in conservation with us, and it's a lovely piece of property. Hominy Creek, like I said, this goes off of Amboy Road, and the DOT funded a 1.2 mile section of greenway that is just for bicycles and walkers, and this goes off of that, and we're fiscal agent for this project as well as donors to buying the land. when New Belgium came to town, we talked to them and we said, we really think that you need to do incredible stormwater. And we think that you need to showcase what you can do and not just do the minimum. And they agreed. And so we got $400,000 in grant money, and there'll be interpretive information on this property, and we'll have conservation easements over it, that where the BMPs are, the best management practices are. But it's another little piece of open space, and it's another water quality initiative. So far, the Wilma-Dykeman Riverway plan has attracted over $200 million in federal and state highway funds. Swananoa is next. It's coming. Amboy Road, $45 million's been appropriated for that. Azalea Road Park, it's another project that we did, and we did a stream restoration there. We own conservation easements over the property, and it so happened, this was years ago, the chairman of the Asheville Buncombe Youth Soccer Association was our former chairman, and we worked with them to identify land where they could have soccer fields on the floodplain. They went out, they raised the money, they bought the land and developed it, and the erosion on the banks of the Swananoa was like this.
Mhm.
So you get, these are grown men, so you get a sense of the, and one of the things that had happened is the river had been moved, and that apparently was pretty common. You know, oh, let's straighten this river out, it'd be easier to mow the grass. And so we got a $1.5 million grant, and we relocated 1.3 miles of the river to its original location. And that's what it looks like today, same place. We ended up on the cover of Caterpillar magazine. Now I know you're impressed. It was a really big deal. And now when they teach stream restoration, Roskin method, which is a very highly sophisticated method, this is where they teach it. Because we really got a lot of pushback from a lot of people that this could not be done. And we said, well, I think if we hire the right people, we can do it. We have camping sites all up and down the river, and we own conservation easements on those. Our camping sites are free, and we own them, or we own the easement on them. And so we have a map and an app to get those. How we paid for a lot of the greenways is through deeds of support. Many of you in this room own $50 a foot. 100% of that goes into a fund and is only used for greenway development. So we have a Hominy Creek Greenway fund. We have a Broadway Greenway fund. We're talking to Transylvania County about a Greenway fund, and that money will just be held as match money for grants. Instigation money, lots and money to make greenways happen. More greenways are coming, more parks are coming, more conservation land is coming, more river access, stream restoration, stormwater controls in our watershed. The big dream for us is, let's link the French Broad River to the Appalachian Trail in Madison County, and let's link the Swananoa River to the Mountains to the Sea Trail on Azalea Road, right off Azalea Road, where the headquarters for the Parkway is. And we can advertise that on the French Broad River, you can go from Maine to Manio. So that's just a smattering of some of the parks and stuff we've done over the years, and I really appreciate your attention. And if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Jim.
I've got a question for Jean. Do you have any stories about the bridge over the park? Were you always under the Haywood Street Bridge?
The RiverLink Bridge?
No, the Jean Webb Park.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's under
yeah.
the RiverLink Bridge, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you find anything under the bridge, or was it just you tried to?
A couple of dead bodies, right?
Yeah. It was just a whole lot of overgrown vegetation and junk,
Yeah.
but nothing. Speaking of bridges, to show you a quick story, I'll tell you that before we really got started, we were told that, and we knew the Boy Scout troop that did this. They were taking, a camping trip down the river. They went under the bridge at Skyland, not now, the new bridge, it's the old bridge. And as they went on down, they noticed something was thrown from the bridge into the French Broad, and it was a couple of bicycles. And it was very obvious to these boys. And evidently the leader, was up in arms about it. And so he got to the side of the river and got out of his canoe and went up and found a sheriff's car from Henderson County. And so he took the boys and they visited the sheriff's office out there and asked them, and they said, "Oh, well, we were getting rid of evidence." But I think that just shows you the kind of attitude in the early days. So things have changed, thank heaven.
I remember one of my favorite stories about Jean Webb is she was always getting people down to clean the river, always. And I like to plan and do other things. I'm not necessarily good at getting dirty. But, she'd just get you down there. So this reporter came over to me and he said, "Hey, there's some woman over there claiming to be Jean Webb." And I said, "No, that is Jean Webb." And he said, "They don't name parks after people who are living."
I just one comment. We had an event last month down there, and it was the rainiest day in the last 3 months, and it was dry.
Yeah,
So that's a neat feature of the park.
Yeah.
because you were under the bridge. Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah, the NCDOT has chosen a 4B
Yes.
alternative for the Bowen bridges.
Right.
Having worked on that, we're delighted that that's the way they're going.
Right.
That means that's going to be a redeveloped way of getting across the river. Is there any thought about how to get from the Bowen Bridge down to the river so we have that connection?
Right. I think there's been lots of talk about how we would do that, and stairs along the sides of the banks. One of the artists called me, and she wants to put whirligigs under the bridge that would move by wind. I think there's lots of ways we can talk about how that could happen. One of the, I think the board has tried to be helpful in the discussion of the bridge, but we approached the DOT probably 15 years ago and said we have to have a signature bridge, and they said, go ahead and promote that, but you have to understand the DOT doesn't pay for that. You're going to have to do that from the community. But I'm always amazed that you go to an older city. My husband grew up in Utica, New York, and we used to build beautiful public things. I don't know when we started not being able to afford to do that or desiring not to do that. And you build a school now, and it's a big deal if it lasts 30 years. What's wrong with us? So I know that we can do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. The Ravenel Bridge in Charleston, what's his name? Joe Riley started talking about that. He built it. He came $1 million under budget and a year ahead of schedule. What's wrong with us? We need to get this done. So, yeah, congratulations. I know you've all worked hard on that.
You know that rock wall at Jean Webb Park, do we have any idea what that was associated with?
I don't know.
There's lots of rock walls, though. If you
Yeah.
if you go around Chicken Hill, if you were to take a walking tour through Chicken Hill, you'd be amazed at some of the beautiful rock work that's up there, even now. So I don't know either, but it wasn't uncommon to see these rock creations, along the river here or up in the river in the neighborhoods too.
You didn't mention, but we now have that other bridge at Jean Webb Park that was built just
Oh, yeah.
a few years ago.
Right.
The 13 Bones
Right.
Bridge.
Right.
Which was, I think, a nice addition.
Right.
Actually, part of the Greenway,
Right.
infrastructure for the Greenway.
Right. Any other thoughts or comments or anything? Well, we really appreciate you coming today. Dave, when's our next talk, and what is the subject?
The subject is the First Broad River Paddle Trail.
Uh-huh.
And it is Friday, 4 o'clock, and I believe the date is July 18th. I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
Um,
So we hope you'll all come to that, and we're going to be doing these through December, once a month, and different topics, and hopefully you'll get a better sense of some of the stuff we've done, and it's been really good for all of us to look back, because I think some of the stuff we forgot. Looking at old photos, we go, oh yeah, that's right, we did that. So thank you.
You
very
wonder
much.
how it all got done.
Just the last announcement on that this Wednesday at 4:30
Yeah.
at Pearson Bridge.
Oh, right, right,
There's gonna be champagne and strawberries.
right. We hope you'll
All the
come
local
to our.
politicians you ever wanna see.
It's an election year.
Can we throw them in the river?
Right. Yeah, if you want to come, we'd love to have you come and see this new river access. It is by far the most elaborate we've ever done. It's quite lovely.
Wednesday at 4:30?
Wednesday at 4:30 at Pearson Bridge.
So I have one question. I mean, the Karen Cragnolin Park, what is the next step for you?
Well, the next step is, the French Broad River Garden Club nominated that park for a Founders Fund grant, which we got. And we have been able to match that with a Ray Anders grant. And we are waiting now for EPA to give us the go-ahead on how much more testing we have to do. When we got that property and got all the cement up, they made us test randomly the whole site, the whole 6 acres. I cannot tell you how expensive that was. We identified where the contamination was, and we have cleaned all that up except for one site. And now they're telling our phytoremediation specialists that we have to clean up that site, and then we're going to random test the whole site again. And we're like, that is really not what we thought we were having to do, and where are we going to get the money to do that? So we're kind of there. We have some master planning money. We'll do some master planning there. And, we're going to lose most of the space. The city's going to condemn most of our land where we're doing river music now. So we're going to have to find a new location for that. And that is a 6-acre site. It would be a great site. And, one of the things that we've talked about internally is we would love to have a permanent outdoor amphitheater where something more spontaneous could happen. There could be graduations there, dance performances, singing and all the rest, and that would be a great location to do it. So and I will say that, I'm responsible here. It's been slowed down because of my illness a little bit, but we're getting there, and EPA is interesting to work with.
That's great to have you back.
I haven't been in this building since February.
Wow.
Yeah.
It missed you.
Well, I missed it. Well, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and I really appreciate you all coming, and it's great to see old friends and catch up. And Jean, this would not have happened without you and Wilma Dykeman inspiring us and inspiring a whole community.